This is the general concept of how we align national geodetic datums to the ITRF. And I wanted to start with this great picture from a colleague of mine in Australia, Dr. Anna Riddell. She put this together for her PhD. This was to give a bit of context as to the importance of reference frames. And you can't read all the words there, but you can see that it's all about Earth dynamics on the right-hand side. We're looking at changes in the center of the mass of the Earth, sea level loading, hydrology, ocean currents, plate tectonics, earthquakes, a whole range of reasons why the Earth is constantly moving and changing. And the more accurately that we want to be able to measure changes in the Earth, and the more things we want to be able to do with geodesy, the more accurately we need to be able to define our reference frame that sits over the top. And this is a line I like to use when we're talking to politicians, because if you, particularly natural hazards or climate change, if you're talking about being able to manage something appropriately, then you need to be able to measure it. And you measure these things using geodesy, like you can measure climate change, you can measure earthquakes, you can measure plate tectonic motion, all these effects. But if you're not measuring them with respect to an accurate and reliable reference frame, then you're not actually managing the problem very well, because you can't do it in an integrated way. So I thought that's good to try and set the scene about why we're discussing aligning our national geodetic datums. That's what NGD is up the top, your national geodetic datum. Why do we want to align that with the International Terrestrial Reference Frame? And if I can, I'll keep repeating this all week because I think it's critical. The International Terrestrial Reference Frame is giving you, that's how GPS and satellites are giving you information. It's with respect to the International Terrestrial Reference Frame. So by you having your national datum aligned with that, you can make best use of all that satellite information. So let's break down this diagram. If we start on the left-hand side, we can see that from a global perspective, the definition of this International Terrestrial Reference Frame, these are all the different techniques that we were talking about this morning that we're using to monitor and measure changes in the Earth over time, and that's time dependent. So we're continually updating and refining our model of the Earth, our ITRF. And if you go then to the extreme on the right-hand side, this is an example from Germany of a national datum. And we want to talk about here in this session, how are they linked? How is the national datum linked across to the global datum? Now you can see here that there's an option to go through the middle, which is to have a regional reference frame. And in Europe and in Asia Pacific and in the Americas, they have this regional frame. Now we'll be talking a lot more about AFREF, and Aslam will be providing a presentation. We'll have an opportunity for a discussion on that this afternoon around AFREF and what Africa is doing. At the moment, though, Africa doesn't have a regional frame and the Arab states don't have a regional frame. They're also looking at options. And in the next session, I'm going to take you through some of those options that are available for Africa, how you could develop one. But if we put that aside for a minute, you can see that line at the top in yellow. There's an opportunity to link a national datum across to the ITRF without the regional frame. So if you wanted to do that now, if you wanted to modernize your reference system in your country, want to modernize your datum, you can create a link across to the ITRF and do that now. You don't have to go through a regional frame. And I'll work through an example with that, with you on that this afternoon. Just keep that in mind though, because I think that is really important information. You shouldn't be constrained to thinking we have to solve the AFREF problem first, particularly if you're looking to try and get funding for work within your countries. It's important to make a strong case for linking with the ITRF now. I would recommend you start on that now and then integrate the work with AFREF later on as you develop that as a community. So if we look at that from a slightly different perspective, you can see on the left-hand side, the process that you would go through to align your national geodetic datum with ITRF is, first of all, you choose realization of ITRF. So if you were starting this now, the most appropriate one would be to say, I'm going to align my national geodetic datum with the most recent and most up-to-date realization of the International Terrestrial Reference Frame, which is ITRF 2020. And you would pick an epoch. So you'd say, and we're going to set our time series starting at 2024 or 2025.0. That would be up to you. You could then consider how you go through that process. And this is just a one pager to show you, but I'm going to work through an example where we collected some data from Côte d'Ivoire, and we're showing you how you could do this just using a few stations in a country to create that alignment. But effectively, the step is that if you choose to go through a regional frame, you connect your regional frame with your national datum, and you go 1, 2, 3. But as I showed you, you can skip over that regional frame in Africa if you wanted to at the moment by just collecting some global navigation satellite system information. It could be continuously operating reference stations, continuously operating stations that are running in your country, or you could have campaign data, which means you have a week's worth of data, or you might have a couple of months worth of data on particular sites. And you can analyze that data with respect to ITRF coordinates. And this will make a lot more sense when you see the example, but I think at this stage it's just important to understand those concepts. You have international, regional, and national, but you can skip that regional component if it's not available, like it is in Africa at the moment. So that's the highlights. And now what I'm going to take you through is I'm going to give you a bit of regional context to show you how do other regions tackle this problem and what are they doing about it. And then we'll have a short time for discussion before the coffee break. And then Aslam is going to introduce us to the AFREF situation after the coffee break. So here's a few slides now on regional collaboration. So the motivation for these regional collaborations, I think, is also another important topic, because if we can't explain why we're investing a lot of time and energy into developing a regional reference frame, then we probably shouldn't be doing it. So that's a good reason. That's a good point of discussion this afternoon. In generally speaking, these continental densifications of the ITRF, which is the development of regional reference frames, is normally done because of the restrictions we have with the development of ITRF. So computationally, we can't take in all the different GNSS sites from around the world at the moment and run it through for the development of ITRF because there's just too much data. And the purpose of ITRF is not to actually determine, it's not to monitor all the geophysical processes, which is more like what a regional frame does. ITRF is designed to give you the most accurate global model. So the people who are developing ITRF, they're deliberately not using all the different GNSS data. They're trying to come up with the most accurate global model. And then people who are working on regional reference frames, they're the ones trying to understand these regional geophysical changes that are happening across the continent. And then you, as a national representative, you can decide which of those geophysical processes do I want to model in the development of my datum. So in some cases, you may not want that geophysical process in there because you might be encountering subsidence or something. And you think, well, I don't want something sinking in my national datum. So you might leave that data out, but at least you're aware that it's there. So the regional information it's densified, it's more detailed, it's giving you great information about how the continent is moving. And then you as the national authority can choose what data you want to use in your national datum and what you'd like to leave out. So it's datum development, it's a science, yes, but it's also an art form. You need to understand your data and understand your stakeholders and what you're trying to deliver. So what are the benefits of having that regional frame? Well, some of the good things is you can lean on and work together with other people to accurately analyze the GNSS data. You can test out different techniques and the different methods that people are using. You can help each other determine the geodetic parameters. You're not on your own. And you can also then use that GNSS data for scientific and societal applications. So you might use some of the data for datum development, but then you might use some of the data to understand your country and the movement in your country in more detail. It allows you to cooperate better. And I've seen this done very well in those three regions that have regional reference frames. There's a lot of knowledge sharing, which is, I think, very important. And they also share responsibilities for data collection, data analysis, and combinations. So it means that you don't need to have that resource in every country. You can have a shared resource. Okay, now this is detailed, and it's detailed for a reason. And I'm not expecting everyone to be able to take this all away now and understand it all in one go. But this is a really useful resource for you to reflect on in the future because you have the slides. And what I'm explaining over the next 2 or 3 slides is the difference in the way that this regional reference frame was developed in Europe. Europe does it one way, and Asia Pacific does it quite a different way. And it's all driven by the stakeholders. So if we start with the European one, the European Terrestrial Reference System, as they call it, is ETRS 89. And this is a regional densification, and it's fixed to the epoch of 1989.0. And it's a static regional reference system. So it's not updating in the same way that ITRF coordinates update. But since the Eurasian plate is moving about 2.5 centimeters per year, they're starting to see obviously a clear distinction between ITRF coordinates and ETRS regional coordinates. And the way that they model that is using a plate model. So it's a simple method to say the average velocity of the plate, the European tectonic plate, is moving about 2.5 centimeters in that direction. We're going to apply that velocity to the plate and line it up to get it lined up with ITRF. They use a process called minimizing the velocities rather than eliminating any distortion. And what that means, if I jump forward here, you can see on the right-hand side, there's some lines there. There's some vectors that are showing you what the minimized result looks like. So if you took that plate tectonic motion out of the equation and tried to match it up with ITRF, you get pretty close, but there's still some regions where you've got some big lines there, which means it's not quite fitting because you've got localized effects and localized impacts in those regions. So if you look, for example, up in the Fennoscandia region, so you're looking at Sweden, that Sweden-Norway region, you see the lines that they're pointing roughly to the west. And so part of that is what you're seeing is the impacts of post-glacial rebound, where the ice is coming off the continent, and then the continent is moving in a weird direction compared to the normal plate motion of the rest of Europe. So you're getting these localized impacts that you can't take out when you apply a simple 2.5 centimeter movement. So that's what they talk about when they're saying they're minimizing the residuals. You're not getting rid of it completely, but you're trying to minimize the difference between the regional frame and ITRF. And so a big discussion topic in Europe and in the workshop that we ran with them in February was, what does the next regional reference system look like for Europe? Are they going to keep using ETRS 89? The countries that are experiencing these big residuals that you can see on the right-hand side, they want something more modern because it doesn't fit their purpose. They're getting very big differences between ETRS and ITRF. They can't explain it. It's very difficult to talk to stakeholders about it. They want something that's more representative of the movement of their country today, which jumps me through to the way that the Asia Pacific reference frame operates. And that is not a static reference frame, but it is a time-dependent reference frame. And the reason for that is because when they created the Asia Pacific reference frame, they knew there's a lot of different plate tectonic motion happening in that region. They have the Pacific Ring of Fire, which is talking about the Australian plate moving under Indonesia, causing a lot of earthquakes, causing volcanoes. You've got Australia and New Zealand. They're on separate continental plates moving in different directions. It's very complicated, and you see a lot more of those regional differences than you did on the European one. So they knew that a static reference frame for a regional realization in Asia Pacific would not be appropriate. So they developed a time-dependent one. So every week, a new set of coordinates comes out from the Asia Pacific reference frame, and it gives people the most up-to-date coordinates for every one of those sites in that regional reference frame. And then it's up to the user to decide, okay, which coordinate set am I going to use for the development of my national datum? Or how do I want to interpret these coordinates to try and understand the earthquake pattern or the buildup of strain in a particular region, or to understand hazard risk throughout the region? So everyone is using it slightly differently. So the key takeaway point is that one down the bottom there is that while both ETRS, the European one and the Asia Pacific one, they are both regional geodetic reference frameworks, the way that they operate and the way that they're designed are done because of the users, and they're done because of the way that the tectonic environment is laid out. So the European one is static and it's tied to the Eurasian plate, and it's suited for the vast majority of the European users quite well. On Asia Pacific, on the other hand, has a dynamic one, and it's in direct alignment with the ITRF, and it's reflecting the constant tectonic activity and the complexity of that Asia Pacific region. So you remember, coming back to the comment I made to Edna's remark before, looking at what requirements what should we be doing for our country, or what should we be doing for our region? It's hard to make a decision on this until you understand it a bit better. And that would be something I'd recommend is done through APREF. Understand what those regional distortions are, understand what the country requirements are, then make a decision about how you would implement a regional frame. So here's how it looks from other states, member states around the world, and in particular the regions. This is looking at it from the International Association of Geodesy point of view. You can see that under the IAG, which is a science organization, they have a commission that looks at reference frames and provides advice to countries and support. And then they have subcommissions for all the different types of regional frames. So there is one for Europe, that's SERGAS, that's the Americas in general. SERGAS, sorry, that started as being only South America. They're now doing a combined one with North America, which is NAREF. And then you can see there is one set aside for AFREF because work has started on that. APREF is 1.3E. And then there's the SCAR one, which is around the Scientific Committee of Antarctic Research as well, under 1.3F. With respect to the Asia Pacific reference frame, there's a total of over 1,000 different GNSS stations, and these are continuously operating stations which are used in 2023, as of 2023. And 330 of those are also IGS sites. So they're being included in the determination of the ITRF. But you can see that there's, almost 700 that aren't. So those extra 700 are getting analysed on a weekly basis as part of the regional frame, but there's too many to include in ITRF. So they're done under the regional frame instead. There's 3 different regional GNSS analysis centres that are collecting that data and analysing it every week. And at Geoscience Australia, they provide the role as a central bureau and also the combination centre. So they bring those 3 solutions in together and do a combined solution and make that available on their website. And the pictures there show the station positions and the estimated velocities for all those sites included in the APREF solution. For Europe, they have about 450 stations. As you can see, there's no shortage of analysis centres in Europe. Lots of different universities and government organisations are involved. They have 16 analysis centres in Europe that are analyzing this data from UREF. I mentioned that stuff around 1989 before. It's tied, it's fixed. I think we can skip over the rest of that. In terms of Surgas, as I mentioned, this is in South America. This is the geodetic reference system now for the Americas, which I think is very pleasing. It's bringing together the work that has been done in South America and North America to tell a combined story. And it's also got Central America in there as well, which is great. So it brings together the roots it has within the IAG and also the Pan America Institute in Geography and History. It's got 3 different working groups. They have a working group on the reference system, one on Surgash at the national level. So how do you develop these national implementations and national datums? And then the third one is around the vertical datum. They have about 500 stations, and the Regional Analysis Centre for the IGS as well. They have 11 different processing centres locally and 2 different combination centres. So you can see this is a region that is very sophisticated when it comes to how organised and coordinated they are, and they share the load across the different countries. The different colours here represent what they call their core sites, excuse me, which the red ones are the ones that are included in ITRF. They're the IGS stations. And then you can see all the green ones that are just getting analysed as part of the regional reference frame network. Again, you can see the extra information that they can gather from having all those green sites observed with respect to the red ones, which they're using as sort of their control in the adjustment. And we'll talk through how you do that a bit later on. So almost all the countries in the Americas are aligned with ITRF, and they're working to incorporate even more countries as part of this initiative. And there's a big push at the moment to try and get greater support for countries in the Caribbean. One of the biggest restrictions there is, again, around language barriers. So the Surgas team are doing a lot of work trying to do translation of products across Spanish and also Portuguese and English to try and make sure that all these countries can get involved in the Surgas community, which I think is fantastic. They have a range of technical guidelines, which might be useful for you to have a look at as well. It explains the processes they use to analyze their data and how they make that information available. This is just good guidance for you to realize that you're not on your own here if you start having these discussions within AFREF. There's a lot of work that's been done with Surgas, UREF, and also with the Asia Pacific reference frame, where there's information available, and there's also, importantly, people who are very passionate about this and very happy to share their time and provide training and support. I'll jump over that. I'll come back to it when we're talking about the G potential, the gravity, a bit later. The last one I wanted to mention is a group that are similar to yours in the position they're in at the moment, where they're trying to work out what does good look like for their region. So there's also discussion happening within the Arab states. And as you can see, they started working on this back in 2014, which I think, Fernand, is about the same time that the AFREF discussion started as well, right? 2013. So they're still yet to work out exactly what they want for their region and to get that coordination and to find that leadership. So you're not on your own when it comes to this, and this is something you could potentially work through with some of your friends from the Arab states as well. And the UN is a really good place to be able to share that information. I'll jump over that because I want to leave some time for discussion and questions. So that's all I had to present on that sort of regional context and telling that story about linking between international, regional, and national frames. And just between now and the break, I'm happy to have a open discussion about what your thoughts are on this. Let's not get into too much detail around AFREF yet, because Aslam's going to be presenting on that after the afternoon tea break. But just in terms of general concepts, I'm interested to know, what are the discussions you're having in your country about modernizing reference systems and how you're going to do it? And have you been seeing the lack of AFREF as something deterring you from actually progressing? And does something like this change your mind? A lot of questions that I have for you. So happy to open the floor and get your thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the talk, Nick. I actually have a question on your presentation. I don't know if there's from what I see, as you were saying, there's lots of analysis centers for this data. Has there been any sort of inclination that these analysis centers could, for example, provide compute and expertise to new reference frames being set up? I don't know if they've offered these sort of things. Compute is expensive.
Do you want to say the quote, or do you want me to say it? We're talking about this before. You say it. We're saying before that if within Africa every country was able to build an IGS site, you would find 20 analysis centers around the world that would just go and compute it because it's interesting. So the quote is, if you build it, they will come. It's like Field of Dreams stuff. Don't build a baseball stadium, though. Build a cause station in your country. And I've had this conversation with academics in many of those 16 analysis centers. Most of them would be more than happy to run this because they've already got everything set up. It's not hard for them to run that technical solution. You would find so many people come out. If you made the data open and available and you ask someone to process it, you would have no shortage of analysis centers who would go and analyze that data for you.
Hello. I have a question. Some years ago, we talked about the regional GRS. Now, in the context of the collaboration, we are talking about creating a local GRS, not through the regional, but you can just link to the international. Now, I wonder why that proposal? Did you find something wrong in some regional space in terms of implementation of the international RTRF, where in other part of the world, actually in Europe, for example, they start by building strongly the regional GRS, and then on part of AFREF, now we are confused. I want maybe some of you just give that clarification.
I'd encourage you to think back. Sorry, could I just get you to turn your mic off so it helps with the translation? Thank you. It's important to reflect on how many stations these regional reference frame areas already had in place when they developed the governance structure that sat around it. All the infrastructure was already there. All the data was already there. All their datums were already quite modern in most of those regions. What I'm trying to say is you don't need a regional reference frame to modernize the datum in your country. You don't have to wait for everyone in Africa to agree on how you're going to develop APREF before you modernize your reference frame. I would say start now, do it now, align it with ITRF now, because then you don't have to rely on anyone else to actually achieve the outcomes for your country. I'm not saying don't do AFREF. I see a value in AFREF, but I see the value of AFREF coming in the long term. I think it's something you continue to work on together, and you will find that as you start developing your own national datums, understanding how to link it to ITRF, you will naturally start working better together on a regional solution because you'll be developing your local infrastructure, you'll be developing your network, you'll be developing your own capacity in your country. So just start with your information and what you can do. And then over time, you will find that those networks start to evolve a bit more naturally at the moment, the people I've spoken to and I've said, why are you developing AFREF? No one can tell me why they're developing AFREF.
Another concern, I was chatting with my colleague outside while we went to the lunch. Actually, for African countries, the problem you have is just the capacity, the build capacity. What do you plan for those countries that doesn't have the capacity? I can give an example, my country where I come from, Rwanda, where we don't have, enough expertise in geodesy. Maybe I was thinking if you can just put effort on that side because we are enough so that you can move on the same level. Because as you say, as I realized, geodesy, it's like a network where people can interact and exchange the experience. So in that case, maybe creating some training center where local people can gain some experience from external expertise, maybe that can impact the change in terms of, enhancing geodesy in their country. Thanks.
You will have to wait until Wednesday for that to be answered. You should have put our talk first. There is a lot of plans, and I'm hoping we can have a discussion around exactly that on Wednesday. And what Jack was asking about computing resources in Africa as well. A lot has been done. It's just how do we coordinate and make this happen? And yes, building capacity is one of the biggest things we need to look at, and we've started looking at that as well. There's different options, and we need to all have a discussion and see how we're taking that forward. You can ask the man behind me. We've done some training recently in his country. So, how do we expand on that and do it across Africa? But like I said, you'll have to wait till Wednesday.
Okay, thank you, Nick. And I will speak in French because I'm a francophone and many of you are Oh, my brother is English speaking guy, please. Make an effort to speak French or Spanish or Portuguese, please. Okay, merci.
Thank you so much. So just to respond to the concern regarding capacity building in the technical phase as well as the operational phase. Well, the first thing that I can answer is that what we're doing now is what we're doing now, and it's important. We're here this week. Nick, we're right, aren't we? We've been preparing this for 6 to 8 months, and here we are today. So a year ago, we were looking for African geodesy experts. We were calling one another, and here we are today. How many people are here? 50 people, maybe? There's over 50 people here today participating in this workshop. This, for me, I would say, is a major step forward. To know that we exist, that capacity exists in Africa. Yes, we have to better coordinate our efforts. Yes, we have to better address investments. We have to better share the resources that we do have. And then others can come in and help us. Second point concerning AFREF. So Aslan will speak about it a little later. We'll discuss it at length, I'm sure. But Nick presented this earlier on. We have to draw a distinction between the AFREF and the UNGLIM, as we saw with IEGI, the International Geodesy Association. And I would say that there's the AFREF working group at the level of the cartographic institutions, UN-GGCE Africa. And then it's concrete implementation through a network of stations, which I would say is the easiest way for us to move forward, because if we want to invest in other techniques such as the SLR and the LBA, it'll be very difficult to convince our decision makers to point laser beams at the heavens. It'll be very difficult, but with the GSS, it's much easier. So that's the point that I wanted to make. And I want to encourage you. Of course, we'll discuss this in greater detail during the break, but do work within the framework of the AG, of the IGS. We'll be stronger if we form a network. We won't need every country investing in a computer system and 100 stations, when we can do this with 1 or 2 stations per country, and then we can compute and calculate the observations and draw the necessary conclusions. So let us use the resources we have, coordinate better, and then, of course, engage in international cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernand. The questions here have been fantastic. And I think this is also one of the points where, as Fernand clarified, is the whole purpose of this workshop is capacity building, capacity development. And it came from a needs assessment workshop, or a series of workshops that the UN-GGCE ran last year. One of the important things we need to remember is all of the development we're doing and that we want to seek is fit for purpose. And we always have to, I think, walk the fine line between wanting the best system, the best performing, the best coverage, the best resources, to a realistic, what can we do with what we have now? Where can we work together to all develop our own national datums and build in the sustainable global geodetic reference frame? And some of the training and messages that you will receive this week over the days will be insights on ideas and proposals on how to do this efficiently. But it's all going to come down to the people at the end, how people work together, how different nations work together, and how data is shared. And there are some very important non-technical parts that we also need to consider and to really discuss here as well.
Thank you so much. I just wanted us to look at one point from what Nick presented, and the issue of it's a win-win situation for us in Africa. And I think asking Africans or countries to compute, or you can develop maybe geostatic data in your country without making reference to or relying or waiting for AFREF to have a complete network. Yes, in a way, it is possible. But my question is this, or my concern is this: if a country can have enough stations within a country that you can realize a geostatic data for a country, why not share that data with other part of African countries to enhance or realize the dream of AFREF? So in as much as it's good for us to use data that are available with us, but the fact that Africa, the velocity, problem in Africa is not as much as that as reported for Australia. So if you have coordinate, you have data set available with you, maybe in Burkina Faso, in Nigeria, in South Africa, and you can use it to now develop some other geodetic, provide solutions for some geodetic assignment within your country, why not share the same data set with other part of Africa for us to be able to generalize or have this centralized assignment completed? So that is the puzzle that we need to resolve. So I believe maybe at the end of this meeting, we should be able to agree, countries should be able to resolve. We will give this available station data that are available for solutions to be provided for Africa. We don't need to wait until all countries. If you check the map of the cost map that has been provided, as Lampaka will make provision on that later, you will see that some part of Africa is blank. And if you continue to wait for this set of people, it will be for eternity. So we have to use what is available and continue and have what we can refer to as maybe version 1.1 of AFREF. Then from there, we'll continue. That's my proposal. So what Nick has proposed, yes, it's a 50-50. You don't wait until the final result is gotten, but whatever you have, you can make do with it and have some solutions provided for you. But as much as we can have that solution provided, why not we cascade it, escalate, and then use that problem, that solution to solve the continental problem? Thank you.
Hello. I'm actually contributing and telling you the actual situation that we had before even this meeting. I'm giving an experience that I had in my my PhD program from 2008 to 2012, when I was scouting all over Africa to look for the data, and also trying to look for collaborators from US and other developed countries to help us install GNSS in our country. But it was very, very difficult. I remember in 2012, we had a big project called Africa Array Project. And this project contributed about 22 GNSS receivers to different countries. And by that time, it was a time that they decided to give me, when I was very young, to become a chair for AFREF. By that time, I think it was 2012, before even I completed my PhD. Now, it was very hard, even in my country, that I was given 5 of those stations, but it was very hard to write a letter to the government to help us somewhere to install the station. And we decided to talk to the geology organization of the country to help us to get somewhere to install instead of the Geodesy community. So it was something like, for them, they didn't put it into consideration as if it is an issue for the country. And this was because we have in geodesy, there are internal consistent of the crust. If the country doesn't have a problem of deforming internally, they will see their coordinate to be consistent, because the plate will be moving all together and there's no separation. But for countries that are affected by crust or deformation like Tanzania, is where they can see the differences. And we saw this in so many UN meetings when we were talking with the Arab countries. And they were all coming to our meeting. And we agreed together to give us the data so that we can compute the solution for AFREF. But when they go back to their home, there is no response. Even when you write emails, whatever, no response. So the only solution that we had, that was the common solution for few countries, was in 2014, I remember. So we can talk here, but we need commitment for everybody who is coming from the country, that when you go back, if we write email, you have to respond and give us data, talk to the government. For this time, my government understands, and they have already deployed a lot of GNSS receivers, whatever. And if you ask for data, then this time you can get, because I'm there and then I can talk to them, whatever. But in other countries, we have people who are coming with us here. Maybe they don't have power in their country to convince the government. So when we are talking here about sharing data, please, then we have to be sure that when you go back, you have to go with the same agreement that you're going to share data. Otherwise, we're going to deal with only the countries that can share data and others don't share. So I can mention some few. I know South Africa can share data. They are online. In Tanzania, they can share data. In Kenya, we have only one station, which is IGES, the ML2, right? In Nigeria, yes, they can share data. But when we're talking about Mozambique, there's nobody from Mozambique here who can share data, and they have data. If we're talking about Namibia, we have only one site, I don't know. So if you're talking about maybe Morocco, no data from Morocco, right? So you have few stations now open. Yeah, but initially we had only one. Okay, so then when we are talking here, then we have to think that, do we have all the representative? And are we, if we have all representatives in all those countries, are we actually going to have even other representatives who are not here that we can share all data? If we can share the data, I'm very sure it won't take even a year for us to compute the solution. Thank you. That's my agreement. My contribution, sorry.
I think my colleague Sarias talked about the commitment to share data. This belongs to the government decision. We cannot make now any commitment. We hope, as a scientist, as a surveyor, as all the people working with Genesis, we hope share data, but there are many. I think in Africa, the problem is in the stability of the governments. We should find stability of governments until have stability of the geodetic frame, I think. So I think, yeah, in my experience in Morocco, we had a lot of problems in the beginning when establishing geodetic point since 1999. So we started with 2 permanent stations and 20 or 25 campaign stations. So the data for permanent stations, now we have 5 stations are fully open, so everyone can get the data from the server, UNAFCO server. We share that because in the beginning it was a collaboration with MIT. So we had a commitment to share all the data in this in UNAFCO platform. So yeah, for other countries, I know there are many places. There are GPS stations. They have a network, but even in Morocco, we have a network for research, and there are other stations, hidden stations, we cannot access. So even for me, as I can't access to this data. So it will take time to access to all data, but yes, I think every country should resolve this in their own country. Then we can discuss about sharing outside the country. Thank you.
Yes, thanks.
So I think you can now see why I'm advocating for the approach of working on your individual data in your country, aligning it with ITRF. Because I don't want to come back in 12 years and hear that we haven't fixed all the governance issues in Africa, which means I can't get access to AFREF, which means I can't develop my datum. Don't let perfect get in the way of the good. You can develop something very good right now, even if you're not sharing your data with anybody else. Even if you just keep your data to yourself because your government or your ministry says you can't share it, if you can use it and align it with ITRF, you can develop a modern reference frame in your country now without the data sharing. Now, I'm not saying don't do the data sharing. What I'm saying is don't wait for it. I think keep working on both in parallel. You can do a lot of good work in your country now and keep working on the data sharing with the rest of the community. But don't use it as an excuse not to be doing something in your country now. That's what I'm saying.
Yes. Okay.
Sorry, I'll go to
Thank you.
Joseph and then down here.
Just right on that, and then in line with what you have proposed, I believe with time, the countries that are not sharing data will be more convinced, and then those ones that are ready to share will continue to benefit. Once they are convinced that the data being shared is not used negatively, it is to the development of Africa, they will get more convinced, and then they will share. And then, of course, I'm sure technology and science will still be able, presently and in future, to also see through countries. For example, if you have a country on the right, another country in the middle, another country in the left, and the middle is not sharing, the data shared between the left and the right can perhaps gives us information about the middle that is not sharing. So, and once they know this over time, the countries that are not sharing will be convinced, and they will join in the cooperation and the coordinations that is going on now. Right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think mine is I'm a little bit worried. I would like us to, if Nick wouldn't mind, for us to go to slide number 17. Slide 17, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. Yeah. I said I'm a little bit worried because when we met in Tunisia in 2014, we had a similar issue. What Saria just mentioned. We talked about data gap and data sharing. Now, from what I'm seeing here, our friends from the northern part of Africa are more or less as if they are now aligning themselves to a different reference frame. And that's why I'm seeing Arab ref. So is it that they have a dual role? They are part of AFREF and part of Arab ref, so that we'll be able to know how to situate that. Because when we met in Tunisia, we had a robust discussion, and some of the guys from, aside from him, some from Tunisians were there, and we have a representative from Morocco, from Egypt, Mahmoud was there, and this issue of data sharing, and to be part of AFREP, we discussed it extensively, and we had a solution, which was to be combined by Al-Tamimi. And since that meeting, we couldn't meet again to bring solutions together. And very interestingly, today I'm seeing this map. Then I'm seeing Arab ref. So I don't know which one. Is it Arab ref or Arab ref? I don't know. Because it's something that we need to sort out and to know the way forward.
Okay. Dr. Dodo, thank you very much. But we are in the UN basement currently, so we have to be very diplomatic. So regarding the AFREF project, we will have another meeting focus on that. So let's move forward with the capacity building in Africa for this week.
Thank you. I understand.
Thank you very much.
I withdraw my question, my observation.
Thank you.
Izzy, thank you.
Yes. So thank you very much. Talking about sharing data, I think for us to decide on that and to facilitate it based on this meeting we are having now, first of all, we need to decide on which platform that we need to share that data. What are the terms and conditions for sharing data? Which institution is going to man or manage that platform for sharing of data? Because I saw RC MRD, you already initiated or established a particular platform for data sharing. So I think we need to discuss it and, decide on what to do. I think it will propel the sharing of data so that once we get back, data will start uploading data based on the terms and references that will be developed. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I'm just going to ask us to do an in-video assessment. The question of sharing data, it's let's start by the basic. The people that are supposed to authorize the sharing of the data,
are not geodesists. And some of them are not even interested in geodesy. And you're asking them to authorize the sharing of data, which is a national thing. So this is what I have seen across Africa. The geodesists are somewhere, the cadastral people are the big people, and the land managers are the big people. And these people have zero interest in this geodesy we are talking about. They depend on our products, but they deny their power. So the people in this room here, our biggest task we have is to sell geodesy to these people. It is to promote the geodesy champion. Remember in the first African tour, the bigger thing was, can we identify geodesy champions? These are the people we should put at the front. Say, in this nation, this is the champion. Is there something we can do as a geodesy community to push them in a place or to give them the ability that can enable them to get to those tables of negotiation? When these people are talking about data sharing, we have the core station, the bigger thing will be, so how are we going to benefit? But me as a geodesist, I know that if I have data from Tanzania, my model is going to be better. I know. So let's push the agenda to the people that have the authority. The question of data sharing, it will come to an end. Imagine I am the director in Uganda. Do you think I can't permit the sharing of data with this geodesy mind? It's impossible. So I believe that the assessment has to start with us. Are you willing, you at that small power that you have, what can you use it to benefit the geodesy community before we think about sharing at national? If that small power you have can't benefit us as geodesists, then we cannot talk about sharing big data. So let's push. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bruno. We've got 1 minute until the break now. So there was two more. So one here and one here. 30 seconds. I'm timing 30 seconds. Go.
I should speak in French to be fair. Okay, merci.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, I want to speak to the AFREF datum. So to get an AFREF reference frame, Mr. Brown, I believe, touched on what the real problem was here. We have to develop the reference frames at the country level first. So within the framework of the use of the GSS stations, you'll see that during the computing of the stations data, we use all the existing stations throughout the continent. And this enables us to come up with a definition of the national network, one which will be linked to the GSS stations that exist throughout the African continent. This would enable us to, at a later stage, see stations that evolve towards IGS stations, which will then be able to select to come up with a global definition of the AFREF reference frame. So this, for me, is the way to move forward rapidly. But to develop national networks, and I think we touched on the problem this morning, how do we convince our decision makers, our governments? So we have to come up with proposals, and this is at the governmental level. But part of the responsibility lies with us, those active in the geodetic field. So you'll see that there are very few contacts between geodetic institutes and those who use our data. So people use the data, but do they really understand the importance, the level at which they need to support the setting up of a geodetic reference frame? I'm not sure that they do. So we have a great deal of work to carry out with all of our various sectorial ministries to be able to together. So we have to make sure it's not just one body that advocates to the government. We have to have a whole set of national stakeholders who understand the importance of this, who can come together and who can explain to the government the problems and realities at a national level in the field of geodetic reference frames. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We have to stop there for our afternoon break. And if I can have everyone come back at 3:30, we'll start our next session with Aslam. We're giving us a presentation about the history of AFREF, and we continue this discussion a bit further. Thank you.